Hello everyone and welcome back! Due to the new manual leaning feature in Battlefield 5, I got a lot of questions during the last days and weeks on how to use it on console, as there are not so many buttons available. So I thought I'm gonna do a quick video on that topic and also give you some tips for a good controller setting in general. Please note that these are only tips and that the settings might not work for everyone, but you should definitely give them a try if you struggle with the default settings. First of all, I moved crouch and prone from B on Xbox or circle on PS4 to the right stick. This will give you the ability to crouch, slide or go prone much faster and also while aiming with the stick. You can do this either by setting soldier buttons to alternate or by swapping the buttons manually in custom button mappings. To do this, open the options, go to Controls, Control Schemes, set soldier buttons to custom and press Y on Xbox or triangle on PS4. Just scroll down to melee attack and bayonet charge and set it to B or circle, and then a few lines down below, crouch, slide and prone to the right stick. Just press A or cross to start remapping, then press the stick or button you want for this mechanic and ignore the warning message that occurs for some buttons. Next up is steady scope that you have to press in addition to aim down sight when you use a sniper rifle with a scope and you want your soldier to hold breath. By default it is bound to the left stick. I bound it to the left trigger instead. That gives me the ability to hold breath and steady my scope right in the moment I aim down sight without having to press an additional button. Note that your soldier can't hold breath for a long time. If you aim down sight for too long with that button mapping, your scope will start to shake and you have to aim down sight again for a steady targeted shot. Now let's talk about the manual leaning feature that was added to Battlefield 5 with the last May patch. By default it is bound to the right stick. If you play with alternate button mapping it is B or circle. For me this didn't work pretty well and in some cases it triggered the melee attack even though I aimed down sight. So I decided to remap the mechanic to the left stick. That works pretty well as it's also the stick you move when leaning. So I aim down sight, press the left stick and can then lean left and right. It doesn't collide with the sprint mechanic that is also bound to the left stick, as you can't sprint while aiming down sight, but you can only lean while aiming down sight. The only requirement is that you have steady scope bound to another button or trigger, like I do, as this mechanic would collide with manual leaning. And the last tip concerning button mapping are the triggers. If you have a normal controller, you might not like the long and lazy triggers, especially on Xbox. For a faster reaction time, you can swap the triggers with the bumpers. This can either be done in the console menu or in the game menu. I would only recommend to change it in the console menu if you want to play all games with that button mapping. Otherwise, it's better to change it separately for every game. If you change it in-game, be careful that you swap all mechanics and don't forget one. Otherwise, you would completely mess up your controls. And please take your time to get used to it and don't be frustrated when you hand your enemies an ammo pack instead of shooting them in your first few matches. This is the change that needs the longest time to get used to it. In addition to the button mapping, you can also find some controller tuning options in Battlefield 5. Here you can turn vibration on or off and set the input and dead zones for the sticks and triggers. I would not recommend to set the stick dead zone below 10% as your crosshair might then start to move by itself depending on the quality of your controller. The trigger dead zones on the other hand should be down to 0, only the threshold shouldn't be too low. Of course, the lower the threshold, the faster the reaction of your triggers, but if you haven't swapped the triggers to the bumpers and you use a single fire weapon, you might not fully release the triggers every time. If the threshold is now down to 1 or 2%, it won't recognize the next input anymore, so stay somewhere around 10% and you should be safe. If you swap the triggers and the bumpers, you can reduce the threshold to a lower value. And that's all for today. I hope the video helps a little with finding the right controller settings and layout. These options work well with the standard controller and also with the 4-pedal SCUF controller. Please feel free to tell me in the comments below if you have any other suggestions or if you have any questions. And as always, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel to stay tuned. Until then, thanks for watching, I am the Catwoman and you are awesome.